here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mickelson, your host, speaking at you from Sunday, January 18th, 2026 in the space and time continuum. This is at least my fourth take on starting this show because I keep working myself up into an anger lather over what is going on in Minneapolis and the brutal thuggery and murder of Renee Good in Minneapolis, maybe 15 or 20 miles from where I'm speaking at you right now. I think that gives it more of an impact. For months I was thinking, I don't think it's going to make it out here to Minnesota, but I think Tim Walz attracted it, not because of his own doing, but because Trump is such a petulant little boy. He's like, too many people like that Tim Walz. Everyone likes him. I know he won. Stop saying he actually won the election. I know that. But we can't let people know that. We got to do something to Tim Walz. And then Tim Walz is reacting. I won't describe what it is I feel like I would have to fight myself off of doing to one of these fat fucks with a mask and a gun if I came across them. I know I would end up getting murdered myself, but it puts me in such a rage. I don't like it. I don't like knowing. I don't like imagining the violence that I wish to perpetrate upon anyone or many of these fat fucks. So again, I don't want to work myself up again and have to restart the show for a fifth or sixth time. But of course, Tim Walz is doing the right thing when he's saying, we're not going to back down. We're going to protest, but let's keep it peaceful. Don't take their bait, because that's what they want. They would love it if I did what I want to do to any one or multiple of these fat fucks. They would love that. That's what they're waiting for. They're waiting for one of us to do something to one of them. And so far, we're not doing it. We're not taking the bait, but we are showing up and protesting. Now, believe it or not, I'm not going to talk about this subject as much as you may think. And some of us are angry. Now, I'm an old white guy. I feel a little bit like I don't have to be scared. However, it's coming now. You know that poem in Nazi Germany. You know, they came for these people, then they came for these people, then they came for these people, but they weren't coming for me, so I didn't do anything. And now they're coming for me, and there's nobody left to help me. That's what Trump did in a few months here. Now he's killing the white people. He doesn't care. Native Americans felt like, well, they're not going to come to us because we're on our reservations. Well, no, they kidnapped some Oglala Lakota Indians, or Native Americans, and then apparently the United States tried to make the tribe sign a treaty, I don't know, probably to give up their reservation, and they refused. The Lakota refused, so they're keeping the hostages. So now the Lakota know, no, you're not, they're coming after you too. Now us white people know, they're coming after us too. Usually us old white guys don't need to be scared, right? And by the way, I'm not, but I am so angered. I don't like how it reflects upon myself. How angry I can get over this. But a lot of people are feeling fear. I have yet to see any of these fat fucks in person. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if they make their way out here. We have a factory in the same building of my business that has an array of different people working there that I'm sure. And by the way, you notice I'm not calling them by their name. To me, they're just a bunch of fat fucks. And these fat fucks would love to raid our building and beat up women and mothers and have me come out of my door and start yelling at them and do what I've been fantasizing of doing for the last week and a half to them so that they can shoot me too, and then Trump can, declare war on Minneapolis. They would love that. Okay, again, I'm trying to rein it in. If you can believe it, this is how good I am at reining in my rage. Not very. So I'm even losing my train of thought. Now, there are people who are afraid. There are vulnerable people who are very afraid because they know that these people are being kidnapped. By the way, how many young children have disappeared because of these fat fucks? I almost called them by their name, which I refuse to do. By the way, it was supposed to be a temporary thing. This fat fuck brigade. It was supposed to be temporary. It began after 9/11, 2001. It's not supposed to be here anymore in 2026. So yeah, we need to abolish the fat fuck brigade. Now, getting back again to the point I want to make, there is somebody, Emily Eaton. I'm going to play what she has to say about this and the message to the people who are scared.
And it doesn't matter where I am physically. I can do my work from anywhere. But today, it is important to me that you know I'm in Minneapolis. And many Minnesotans are experiencing actions by our own federal government as terror. I'm using the word terror very specifically. You might assume that it's just another word for fear, but it is not. Fear is what we feel on the inside, sometimes for a good reason, sometimes for no reason. Terror is not another word for fear. Terror, by definition, has intent behind it. It refers to the act of inducing fear or to fear that has been imposed from the outside. So when we are being terrorized, we're being emotionally attacked, someone or something is trying to override our natural state of being, trying to distract us from that inner yes, using a tactic that is likely to cause fear in our body. We cannot, or rarely anyway, can we control the source of our terror, but we can control our response to it. We can control our fear. Because again, fear is on the inside and terror is on the outside. We can recognize the terror on the outside without accepting the fear that it intends to instill within us. We can reject the fear. We can be fearless even in the face of terror. So with that in mind, you need to know that Minnesota is currently filled with federal agents doing everything they can to make Minnesotans afraid. People here have been shot, dragged from cars, sprayed with chemical agents, physically assaulted, often when simply just standing with their neighbors. My social media feed is filled with examples of the agents terrorizing peaceful Minnesotans. But instead of going home because they were scared, they went home and got better prepared. Now they have gas masks and way better winter gear than these out-of-towners. Now, some of the words and actions of these agents suggest that they believed the killing of Renee Good would scare people into compliance. The terror tactics haven't made us subdued. They've triggered us into action that this administration didn't anticipate. From peaceful protests to organized neighborhood watch volunteers, Minnesotans are refusing to swallow the terror that is being pushed at them.
That is Emily Eaton speaking at you from Minneapolis, Minnesota. A message about the difference between terror and fear. We do have a choice. You're completely in control of your reality, and you do not need to be afraid. Remember what AOC said months ago. We won't give them our fear because that's what they want. Tim Walz is saying, don't take the bait. because that's what they want. And they're pushing harder and harder because they know they're almost done. The reason that they're doing these things, the reason that he's talking about going to war in Venezuela, the reason he's talking about going to war in Greenland, which, by the way, Republicans are even saying they will impeach him if he does that, which we'll see what happens if they actually do that or not. But the reason he's doing all these things is, yes, you're right. It's because of the Epstein files. That's what they've been called. It's really the Trump-Epstein money laundering and human trafficking pedophilia ring. Some information has surfaced over this last week, and I'm a little convinced that last week my show would have just been nothing but me being in a rage about what was going on in Minneapolis, because I had lost track of the prize here. I took my eye off the ball. We got to keep our eyes on the prize. The prize is the new earth that happens after the Trump regime has been taken down, just like the Nazis had to be taken down. The Trump regime, I mean, they've got the stormtroopers, the brown shirts, whatever you want to call them. They've got them going on. Breaking people's car. If a policeman had broken a driver's car window anytime before a year ago, it would have been headline news. And now it happens how many times every day, every hour, just in Minneapolis itself. So yeah, last week would have been nothing but an outrage on that. But there are other things to report. First of all, like Emily Eaton said, the people are not bowing down. The people are not giving up. Protests all over the world against his talk about going into Greenland and about what's going on in Minneapolis with the Fat Fuck Brigade, the Nazi Fat Fuck Brigade. People are coming together more than they have, I don't know, certainly in my lifetime, if not the existence of humanity, history on Earth. I don't know. It's amazing. And more right-wing podcasters, and they've all reached their point, and they're done. And they're coming to join us. People on the streets are coming to join us. You hear people say, I'm right-leaning, but what they're doing here in Minneapolis, this isn't right. I still believe in human rights. People who admit in public that they are right-leaning, which means they're probably very far right-leaning. Most of the people I know who used to maybe 10 or 20 years ago call themselves right-leaning are just because, they like Reagan, who, by the way, was wanting to abolish the education department as far back as 1982. But I'm having a little trouble getting through the show, as you can tell. My mind is racing around, and it's because things are really, really intense right now. Like we've been saying, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Well, this is the worst part. And some information that is coming to light is part of that. The worst, the absolute worst. It is what they don't want us to be noticing, and that's why they're putting the pressure on so much. And that, the distractions is what is making the mainstream news. If you're watching CNN, you're going crazy and you have no hope. And that's an atrocity on CNN's part, because they're not reporting the news. They're not reporting what's going on. They're reporting the distractions that the Trump regime wants them to be reporting. But we here at this show are looking deeper. I'm going to come back with some information you may or may not have been hearing about that is pretty unbelievable stuff. We've come to the point. We've come to the point, and it's their last stand. they're getting more and more desperate. They're taking it to the limit. It's their last throws, is what it is. That's why it's so intense. Some of what's being revealed, you can really see why they don't want us to find out what they're trying to distract us from. And we're going to talk about that on the other side of a short break. You're listening to a Satellite View. Satellite View? I can't even talk. You're listening to a Satellite View. We'll be right back. And we're back on a Satellite View. Go to our website, satelliteviewpodcast.com. Go to YouTube and search for Satellite View Podcast, and you will find our YouTube channel. Subscribe. It's free. And then find me at Todd Mickelson on Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, all the things. Getting back to it here, this is actually my second or third take just on the second half. My mind is pretty scattered. The pressure and the intensity of these distractions, as you know, are pretty incredible, and it is because it's their last stand. They're getting more and more desperate because what they're trying to distract us from is coming out more and more, and their cover-up of it is also being more and more apparent by all the moves they make and don't make, by the way. They could just release the files. I'm not going to explain. They're already breaking the law by not releasing the files. And we're finding out that what's in the files is at least as bad as we imagined it to be times 10. There's some information that came out, or it's at least being focused on, kind of a lot, and I think it's going to be reaching more and more into sort of a little bit more mainstream type of media. I don't know that it's ever going to make it to, never CBS. CBS is worse than Fox News at this point. By the way, there's no need to spend any time watching any of the broadcast news or CNN. I mean, it's just ludicrous at this point. But there are interviews, hours of an interview that was actually put up on Substack in late November, and it's just getting discovered now. And the person in the interviews has been trying to get this information out for the last 5 years. It's a male victim / survivor talking about between the age of 9 and 12 experiences that he had back then, along with other young children. I think he only mentioned other girls. And the reason he survives, he kept thinking they were going to kill him, as well as he witnessed around him. And he was told, boys are too hard to find, so you're going to be okay. Girls are a dime a dozen. So he's still here. Basically, I think he feels like he's still here to tell his story. I did listen to the recordings. I'm not even going to mention what they're called or anything, because I don't even want you to try and search for it. I mean, I guess that's what would be credible. But I don't want you to listen to them. I've always been somebody who faces these things right face to face. When people die, I'm the one who keeps it together and comforts the other people. I'm not trying to say that I'm different or better or anything like that. It's just that for some reason, I handle these things in a different way. There are people who don't want this in their head. I have it in my head, and to me, it's like, okay, now it's proven to me that, okay, yes, this is why they are so scared. Wow, because it is 10 times more than I imagined. And I imagined some bad things, but this is different and worse. It's the kind of darkness, if you want to call it evil, that has been hidden from us. And it needs to be revealed. We need to see it in order to get rid of it. And that's why I always handle these things. When somebody dies, I feel like, well, that's a part of life. It's not the end of the existence of the person. And you can take that and run with it, and whatever your belief system is, or if you have, want to keep no belief system, whatever that is. I feel like I want to know what it is. The thing I hate most is not knowing. I don't care how bad it is. Like when I was in high school, if I had a girlfriend or something, hey, if you went out with some other guy last night, I just want to know. I can handle it if I know it happened, and then we can talk about where we want to go. And if you want to leave me, I just want to know. I don't want to be fooled. I don't want to. I want to face it for what it really is. That's why I went ahead and listened, because a lot of people who have listened to it are warning to not listen to it, because it is really, really that bad. There are names mentioned in these interviews, and that's where I was like, okay, let's be real careful here. How old would these people have been? Why would they be there? And also, in the assessment of whether or not this is actual truth, or if somebody's perpetrating some sort of hoax, I can tell you that after listening to them, I believe them. Part of it is because the journalist asking the questions, the independent journalist from Canada, outside of the country, this information is coming from, is part of the reason why these recordings have not been taken down. She acts as though she can't keep the story straight. In the first recording, he kind of goes through the whole story. He names names of other children at the time, because he was a child at the time too. This was going on from about 1979 to 1982. The fact that he goes through the story, and then in the second recording, she's like, okay, so that is this person who did this. And he's like, no, that was blah, blah, blah who did that. And she's like, right. And I think she was testing him. I think that's a journalistic way of like, I want to make sure this person isn't lying. So I'm going to keep grilling them. I'm going to ask them the same question. And then I'm going to, I have it here in my notes that this person did this to this person, but I'm going to switch the names around and see if he catches it. And he always caught it. He would always say, no, that was this, that. No, that wasn't there. That was at this other place. And she's like, right. That happened throughout the review of the story, when she was like, okay, I just want to get this straight. So blah, blah, blah was at the blah, blah, blah. No, that was blah, blah, blah at the blah, blah, blah. He would keep correcting her. That was one way of determining that, yeah, this guy's not making it up. It's the truth in his head. When you're lying, it's hard to keep all that straight. When you're telling the truth, it's not. That was a big part of the test that I was putting it through as I was listening, which is another reason why I wanted to go ahead and listen to it. I wanted to make sure it's not a hoax. I'm not sure it's not a hoax, but I am quite convinced that it is true. And that is why they're afraid of it so badly. Also, since it's out there and since this guy has been saying these things for 5 years, I haven't heard him, but somewhere he's been saying them for 5 years, and he has not been shut down. He's not been sued for libel. He's out of the country. Nobody knows where he is. But Trump would sue him for libel, but he hasn't. Because Trump doesn't want depositions. He doesn't want to talk about this, which is another thing that tells me, yeah, this is true. One of the names is currently sitting on the Supreme Court. And I'm not even going to name who that is, but you're probably going to figure it out, because let's go back in time to October 1991. Anita Hill, testimony to the Senate about who she was working with and for at the time. And that is the person I'm talking about. Her opening statement. I watched 10 minutes of her opening statement, and it all of a sudden made sense. Putting it together with these new recordings I'm telling you about that are so horrific that I don't want you to hear them. Yeah, this person is capable of being at these events back in 1982, these horrific events. Anita Hill's testimony of what this person said to her and told her at the time seemed so over the top 35 years ago. It's coming to light. Anita Hill was a forerunner. She was a pioneer in the women who are victims of sexual, whatever you want to call it, abuse, even if it's verbal abuse like what she went through with this person back then. By the way, she worked for this person in the early 80s. This person was finding new power and new places because of the power this person was being elevated to, which led to the ultimate elevation about 8 years later, going all the way up to the Supreme Court. Wow, now they have somebody in power that high up. I wonder if someday we could get a president into the White House. This cabal, this syndicate, this money laundering, child sex trafficking international system ran by Donald Trump, employing Epstein, who was so good at quote-unquote recruiting. There were also revelations about NYU and Columbia and some other colleges. Lisa Phillips, one of the survivors, she's also been organizing probably the most out of any of the survivors. She was putting feelers out. If you're a survivor of the Epstein sex trafficking ring, come to me. And she started to find that, so you went to NYU as well? Well, you went to NYU? Oh, you went to Columbia? These were all like runaways and you know, really dirt poor young women and girls at the time. And they all went to like NYU. And she said, you know, Jeffrey Epstein tried to get me to go to NYU. And I was already working as a model. I was doing a lot of television commercials and stuff. And NYU told me, well, you can't come here unless you stop working, you know, on that particular dime that Epstein was putting up. And she said, well, I don't want to stop working. So she went back to Epstein and said, well, I'm not going to go to NYU because they want me to stop working. And he said, no, I'll get you in there. And he paid and got her in. A lot of these girls were saying he would overpay my tuition and then he would give me the extra money. And that was in order to keep them working for him in being a sex worker. One of them even said, I didn't even finish the final few classes and they still gave me a degree. And then Epstein said, I did that for you. And it was all to keep these young women working in the Trump-Epstein organization. She went to the Senate with it, and now Senator Jamie Raskin has getting things moving, starting to look into possible investigations on these colleges. There are also banks. This is very, very widespread. It's pretty out of hand. Alex Acosta was told, he's the one who gave Epstein the sweetheart deal in 2008. He testified that he was told that Epstein belonged, quote unquote, belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone back in 2007, 2008. 2 weeks ago, the last time I did the show, I told you a story about Epstein and Trump. Go back and listen to that. This information is really starting to unravel. The DOJ is trying to cover it up, but now these recordings are coming from outside the country. These recordings that I don't want you to hear because they're too disturbing. They're seriously too disturbing. They're not something you want to have in your head. They're not things that you want to know actually occur in our world. And they have been being hidden from us. They're no longer being hidden from us. The darkness has separated from the earth and now we can see it. It's being revealed. We have to Know what it is before we can deal with it. I'm going to tell you a short story. I feel like we don't have enough time to go as deep into these things as I want, but I'm going to tell you a short story dealing with Ukraine and Russia. Still, Russia, they've had more people in the last couple of weeks surrender to Ukraine than ever in recorded war history, apparently. The headlines, again, the people in Ukraine who are reporting on this, power outages, food shortages, people losing access to their money in Russia, in Moscow, in St. Petersburg. The people in Russia are turning against Vladimir Putin because it's like, hey, you said this war wasn't going to come here. Now let's go back in time to the 1940s. Nazi prisoners of war came to the United States, and a lot of them were shipped into the Midwest to work on farms. Here in Minnesota, there were, I don't know how many different camps all around the state. One of them was in Howard Lake, Minnesota, which is about, I would say, 40 miles west of Minneapolis. And it's in the middle of farm country. And it happens to be where both my grandparents, families of my grandparents, my mom and dad met because they lived next door to each other in Howard Lake, Minnesota. So my grandparents lived next door to each other on my mom's side and my dad's side. There are a lot of geeky details to that. Both my grandfathers were the same age. Both my grandmothers were the same age. Both my grandmothers were named Agnes. Both my grandmothers worked for Tonka Toys. Both my grandmothers retired from Tonka Toys and both worked at the same place after that in Howard Lake. And then they moved out of their houses and both lived in the same assisted living place in Howard Lake. Both of my grandfathers, one of them had an aneurysm, one of them had a stroke when they were approximately the age of 50, all within a year of each other. And by the way, my business is located in one of the buildings that used to be the Tonka Toys building my grandmas used to work in. Enough of that part of the story. But there were Nazi POWs in Howard Lake at the county fairgrounds that I used to go to see the demolition derby. My brothers and my dad and I used to love to go see the stock car races. And of course, we were always waiting for the car crash, right? And my dad said, hey, I know of a car race where they do nothing but crash. And it was the demolition derby. So that's what we loved to do, go to the demolition derby. We also saw a lot of horse racing and things on the county fairgrounds, Wright County Fairgrounds, which is located right in Howard Lake, Minnesota. On those county fairgrounds, part of it was cordoned off for Nazi POWs. One of my uncles kind of became buddies with a Nazi POW who was working at the farm of my grandparents on my mom's side. He helped him set up a target for his BB gun. So these POWs were treated so well in the United States that a lot of them, they were sent back to Germany, but then they came back and lived out the rest of their lives, a lot of them in Minnesota, because the United States went by the Geneva Convention. They fed them. They gave them blankets. They were able to keep warm. They slept in beds. This didn't happen when they were Nazi soldiers. They slept in the mud, in the cold, with no blankets and no food. So when they became POWs, all of a sudden they were like, wow, the United States is a great place. Okay, how does this go along with the Ukraine and Russia war? Ukraine has a program that's called I Want to Live. It's a place where Russian soldiers can go online and sign up and make an arrangement to surrender to Ukraine. And Ukraine then feeds them, gives them blankets, gives them a bed, sticks to the Geneva Convention rules. So word spreads, and Russian soldiers want to surrender to Ukraine. They have the incentive to do so, and they are surrendering in record numbers. That's how you do things. Anyway, I kind of feel almost like I need to apologize for how scattershot this whole show was, and I didn't even touch my notes very much at all. The things that are happening right now it's not like normal. I can't just tell you news stories. The things that are happening right now are so intense, and you're hearing about some of the news stories because those are the distractions. I want to tell you about what they're trying to distract us from, and that is getting deeper and more intense than I imagined it was going to get. I knew things had to get worse before they got better, and I thought maybe we had already been in the worst. It's just that I was handling it maybe better than some other people, and the other people are going to be more shocked than me because I've been looking more into this than most people have. But now we're at a place where it's gone far beyond what I imagined it to be. And that's why they're so scared, and that's why they're doing what they're doing. They are the cornered animal. It's their final stand, and they know it. And they're getting more and more desperate. As you can tell, they don't care if they're breaking the law. They'll deal with that later, or they'll take a cyanide pill. Seriously. I'm being serious when I'm saying that. You're not hearing me do my usual chuckle afterwards, like that. Because this is serious. This is getting intense. But that is good. That means we're coming closer and closer to the end of this regime. And like I have been saying for weeks and months, start to imagine how you want things to be different. Abolish ICE? Yes. Okay, let's put that on our list, right? Think of the things that you want to change. Think of the things that you want to have happen, because we're in control. We're not backing down. In Minneapolis, we're not backing down. Anywhere. Across the whole world. They were expecting us to back down. We're not backing down. We're in control. We're in charge. Not them. There's many, 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 many more of us than there are of them. We are in control. Take care of yourself. We need to get through this, and we're going to. Let's stick together. I will look into this stuff so you don't have to. I know that's a cliche, but that's what I'm doing. That's why I don't even want to tell you where to look for these recordings. Maybe I'll reveal that at some point, and maybe you're going to hear it even in this next coming week, because it is spreading more and more to more sources. More and more people are beginning to talk about it. And a lot of people are making the announcement that they're not going to report on it because it's going to trigger their PTSD. They don't want to listen to it. They don't want to go there because they have been told how horrific it is. And I'm telling you, it is horrific beyond what you can imagine. But it needs to be revealed for us to deal with it. Thank you so much if you're still listening. Thank you so much for coming and listening to the show. I promise to have my head a little more together next week. When I speak at you again. And again, thank you so much for being here. I'm so appreciative of it. We're going to get through this together. So thank you again. I will speak at you next week.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mickelson. Go to toddmickelson.com for links and more information.